I think, hi everyone, this is BJ Larson at New England Museum Association as well. Thanks for joining us, and I think while you're taking the survey, I'll take a few minutes to both thank Jillian Finkle and introduce her. I really appreciate her series. In addition to presenting at our last conference, Jillian Finkle has long served on the board of the International Museum Theater Alliance, and she has held the positions of Vice President, Secretary, and President. Now she is an independent contractor and consultant, and she's previously designed and implemented exhibits and programs for the Providence Children's Museum, the National Children's Museum, excuse me for mispronunciation, Akukik Foundation, Chicago. Thank you. Chicago Zoological Society's Brookfield Zoo, Smithsonian National Zoo, and others. She holds an MA in Museum Studies from the George Washington University and now lives with her family in Rhode Island. So thanks again for doing this, Jillian, and I'll let you get started whenever you feel that enough people have done the survey.
All right. How do I see that? Is that the statistics button?
Yeah, let me, are we ready to close? Just to give you guys an overview of how the webinar works, if you haven't joined us for a previous lunch with NEMA, is that if you guys have any questions at all, feel free to ask them at any point during the webinar. Just use the chat feature there and type in your question. And BJ and I will sit there and translate them to Jillian, or she'll stop in and check and see what the chat is going on. So if you guys do have questions, this is what part of the webinar is about, is actually asking questions of the presenter. So it's really interactive in that part, that we do want that interaction. So let me share the results of the survey. Jillian, can you see those?
Yep.
Okay, if you want to take a look at those before we start.
All right.
Are you good?
Yeah.
Okay, let me close that. And let me let you go.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Jillian Finkle, as PJ mentioned, and I'm currently the immediate past president of Intel, and that is the International Museum Theater Alliance. And if I were to answer the survey for you, I would let you know that most of my work has been with children's museums, and the content that that's included a lot of science, but also art and culture as well. And my other experience has been mostly with zoos and aquariums, but I do have some experience with history through the Akukik Foundation, had a partnership with the National Children's Museum. So those are my biggest areas of expertise, and now I'm trying to make a go of it on my own here. So, so what is IMTAL? When we say affectionately IMTAL, it's an independent professional association for supporters and practitioners of music and theater. So it is a dues-based organization. It's a nonprofit. We were founded in 1990. And we are an affiliate of the American Alliance of Museums. And because of that, we do hold many events at the AAM annual meeting. And if anyone is planning to attend and you're interested in what those Intel events are going to be, should be on the Intel website, or feel free to ask. I don't know exactly when they are, but I can tell you what to look for. And Intel was founded actually right here in Boston, and we originally were the hub for the entire world here, and soon it became obvious that it was too much for just one group. So a sister organization formed in Europe, and then another one in Australia, which calls themselves Intel Asia Pacific, since they encompass a lot, like Japan and Hong Kong and the area over there. And so we're all sister organizations now, and so though we are officially known as IMTAL, we sometimes call ourselves IMTAL Americas. So if you look for us on Facebook, we would be IMTAL Americas, serving North America, South America, and Latin America. And every other year, all the sister organizations come together for an international conference, and it does rotate which continent it's on. And so every 6th year, the international conference would be here in North America, as it was last year. But on the off years, or years when that conference is taking place in another continent, the Intel Americas group will have an event here, and we call it a regional event. In case you're interested, there will be one coming up later this year. And through Intel, our members have access to networking, resource sharing. There's a database of scripts that are available for rent. And we have a quarterly magazine/newsletter, which we call Insights. And there's actually an archive of that on in the members area of the Intel website as well. And I'm super excited to share that Intel has a new relationship with NEMA because we were originally housed at the Museum of Science in Boston. And since they no longer have an active theater program, it made sense to try and find another sponsor in the state of Massachusetts where we're incorporated, and NEMA has so kindly agreed to do that for us. I'm so thankful and excited. The International Museum Theater Alliance, we were talking about the performing arts, and it's natural to think of performing arts in a museum as someone from the outside coming into your museum to give a performance, such as a concert, a dance show, or some kind of traveling theater show. But what we're talking about today is an actual museum program that utilizes a theatrical technique or performance. And by that, we really could mean anything. And I've made a list with just some general ideas on it to give you a sense of just how many different things could be under that umbrella of a theatrical program. We're not just talking about a play or a musical concert. It really could be a mascot or a character that's circulating through the galleries. It could be the incorporation of some kind of role play or pretend that's going on within a educational program. I put performance art thinking of a dance program that was done at the National Building Museum with construction vehicles and actual dancers that was presented in the parking lot. And as well as thinking of the video and the audio that you use as a theatrical program, since it's often enhanced with actors and such. So that term museum theater, which is, is in the name of Intel, is sometimes one that can cause confusion or sometimes even put people off a little bit. You think we're a museum, we're not a theater. And as I said, we're talking about a museum program instead of necessarily a theater program coming in from the outside. This is something thinking of developing within the institution itself. And so at Intel, we've adopted that term museum theater as more of an umbrella term to refer to all of those different theatrical techniques that could be under that umbrella. And I think one thing that unites all of them is the intent to educate, that we really see a theatrical program as an educational program, part of the educational part of the museum, and that it's driven by the mission. And we use the term theatrical program now versus a play to try and delineate some of those differences. If you're talking about an actual play, a production with actors, performance, it can be very different than you think about using some of these other theatrical techniques that are perhaps a little less involved. And over the past few years, Intel has developed a document of best practices for the use of theater in a museum. And in doing so, we wanted to really define what we're talking about when. And so it felt very important to say, if you're doing a play, these are some things that would indicate best practices. And if you're doing a theatrical program, here are some other things that you pay attention to. And that might apply to using first-person characters. It might apply to your demonstrations, which could be historical, could be like a trade demonstration, or could be a science demonstration. And then another term I wanted to share, this idea of participatory experiences, is a real trend that we've been seeing. And it's more than just a performance, actors performing for a passive audience. It's really getting the visitors involved in the experience itself. And one example of this, I think it gives a good sense of what I mean by that, is the Follow the North Star program, which is done by Connor Prairie out in Indiana, where the participants are put in role as runaway slaves, and they travel around the site and they meet different people, different actors and characters who interact with them as if they were runaway slaves. Some of them, of course, are giving them help or advice. Others are not so nice. They're actually being pursued by a slave catcher. It's a really intense experience, and then at the end they're given a chance to step out of it, process the experience, talk about it, and this really makes quite a big impact on those participants. So I put here basically for the sake of the archive just the actual definitions that we use in the best practices document, which at the end I'll show you how to access that document. But basically, just as we said, defining a play as something different than the rest of these techniques. So how do we use these techniques to connect with our visitors? First of all, you need to get them in the door, and we can't connect with them if they're not with us. And theater can be a great way to get them in the door. It's really seen as something special. If you think about the kind of marketing push that you might do when you're opening a new exhibit, that same kind of marketing attention is paid when you're doing a new production or a new performance. And in most cases, those performances cost a lot less to produce than a new exhibit would, and yet you get the same amount of attention, especially if you've made a commitment like once a year or whatever to create a new show. It can be a regular thing that people look forward to, expect. You can create some repeat visitors as well. Also, in terms of lengthening a visit, and once they're there, studies have shown that visitors who attend a museum theater performance tend to stay longer in a single visit than if they don't. And if you think about it, it's it does give them a break. It breaks up the the experience, so they're doing something different there. It gives them variety. Also gives them a chance to rest. We've all heard of museum fatigue. It's definitely a real thing, and if your performance provides a place to sit down, it definitely is rejuvenating, lets them go out and stay longer at your site, and can alleviate crowds. If you have a performance and you're taking a large number of visitors off the floor of your museum for a designated amount of time, or if you have strategically placed your performance in a part of your site that is not as well traveled, it can move the crowd over to that location at that specific time, which also makes a better experience for the visitors if they are not fighting crowds the whole time. And also, theater can meet the need of visitors for live interactions with staff, something they often say they really want. And this is a very efficient way of using staff since you're encountering large numbers of people at once. And by meeting all of these needs, it's not surprising that theater experiences are but often rated highly on visitor satisfaction surveys. Not only for themselves, but especially when talking about children, and parents are asked if this was a valuable experience and educational experience for their children. Very high marks on that area. And if that experience is included in the cost of the admission that was already paid, or in the cost of a membership, it is also seen as an added value financially as well. So let's say that you have a topic that is perhaps a little difficult or controversial that you want to present. Theater can be a great way of presenting that topic because it's safe and non-threatening. So if you are observing two characters perhaps talking about an issue that maybe you feel strongly one way about, no one is confronting you directly and saying, what is your opinion about this, as might be the case if you were talking about it with a docent or other interpreter. But when it's happening to someone else, there's a distance that's created there, and it really allows for a way in with people who might be a little defensive about that. So it's also, if you think about it, a theater is a place where you might have less distractions. And it's not that museum visitors don't get up and walk out of shows, because they will do that. But you are kind of, trained in that as you're in that area and watching the show. So gives you a chance to think and question as an audience member. And the real key with theater that sets it apart from other types of interpretation is really the emotions, because a theater experience, has been around for thousands of years with humanity. It's successful because it does, touch on the human experience, and that emotion that you feel is what really connects you to the topic or the story that's being told. And maybe it's just happiness. Maybe the show is funny and you laugh, or it could be very serious and moving. Certainly not uncommon sight in a museum theater situation to have visitors actually break down and cry. And if you feel something, whatever that emotion might be, that emotion is linked to memory, and you're going to better remember the experience. You're going to better remember the story. You're going to even remember some of the content better if it's connected to your emotions than if it was just presented didactically. And also, if it is a more participatory experience and they're involved, then that's another, we've all heard that topic of experience, or the quote, the famous quote, where experience something I will remember and I will learn that way. And so, especially if that participation is voluntary, then it's, again, not threatening, and can definitely be linked to that memory and even behavior change, which is linked to some of our missions and our institutional goals. So I am going to pause here and see if there are any questions before I get into all the different examples, the specific examples.
I think we just have one. I'm not sure if you'll be discussing this later on or not, but how do you convince boards that museum theater is worth the effort? I think I'm hoping to do that, to show a little bit now with this conversation right here. Okay. The mission of the museum is the objective, right? And so if you're trying to convince your board that museum theater is the way to do that, you want to talk about how it meets the mission and how it's going to successfully meet the mission. And I think showing the visitor satisfaction, and then explaining the idea of the emotions being linked to memory. There are studies that could be cited, if your board is a data-driven kind of group, or show them an example of what you mean by it. I have at the end of this a few. I'll point out where there might be access to some videos online. Museum theater doesn't always translate as well to video, but being able to actually show them an example, like a live example of what you're talking about, or that's definitely helpful. The other thing IMTAL has started doing in terms of talking to leadership and boards is our yearly IMT award. And what we do is recognize a museum leader or a senior staff member that is supportive of museum theater,
and we interview that person and give them a chance to explain why they found museum theater to be so successful in their institution. And we publish those interviews and try and share that with people as a means of, look at this well-respected museum, this well-respected leader of this well-respected museum. This is why they said this was important. And that has shown to be helpful too.
Okay, I do have one more question. Do you have suggestions about where to turn for ideas about marketing museum theater? My organization is small and doesn't do a lot of marketing, and I'm concerned about the possibility of having empty seats. I think we're all worried about that one.
Well, what's nice about a theater program in a museum is that those newspaper calendar listings that are often free, or on the online services that publish, like, what's happening this weekend in your town, they like to publish events. So if you have a site and you have exhibits and the exhibits are open every day from 10 to 4, a newspaper like that or a website like that might not see that as noteworthy or special enough to put in their calendar. But a performance is different. The performance they will list because it's an event that is happening at 11 o'clock and 1:30, on Saturday. And that's I found a great way to have ongoing marketing that is low cost. And in terms of, I think that would be the one big suggestion beyond, the traditional means of, where do people look to find out what's going on in your town, or, if you're a tourist area, do they publish one of those, those destination, destination Providence or whatever it is that would list. And I think with those you just have to know far in advance what your schedule is going to be so that they can publish it, which is sometimes tricky, especially with something like a theater program where it is so flexible. But beyond the traditional means, those are the ones I'd suggest.
Okay, it looks like we're good for questions now, but just a reminder that if you guys do have any questions, go ahead and type them in, and we will stop shortly in a little bit to answer them.
All right. So the first example I wanted to talk about is the National Children's Museum, a place I did spend a lot of time. And it's currently located in National Harbor, Maryland, which is just outside of Washington, D.C. For 25 years, it was located actually within the District of Columbia, but in 2004, they decided to close. It was a very old, wonderfully quirky building, but literally was falling down around us, and wanted to expand and become the National Children's Museum as opposed to Capitol Children's Museum, and were designated as such by Congress. And so closed the old building and worked on building a new one, and in the meantime operated a small storefront space that was free. It was primarily a prototyping and program space, had a few small exhibits there, and then opened at National Harbor in 2012. But the theater program dates back to 2001, and what's really exciting is how, when planning for the new building, at every phase, because it went through many, many iterations, but theater was always seen as a very integral component of those plans. And so when thinking about a new exhibit, how will theater be used to interpret this area, or to complement this area if it's going to be in another location. And so for this new site that they have, it's quite small, much smaller than they had originally intended, but they did make the commitment to have part of it be a theater, 120 seats that would have programming in it every single day, and in addition to programs that might happen within the galleries themselves. So that, and they continue to do that, which is very exciting. And here are a few examples. The top right corner there is just a picture of a musical that they do about dinosaurs. To the left, top left there, an example of some experiments that we did with short form improv to give voice to children's ideas about, in this case it was community engagement and government. And so it was President's Day, and we were talking about, what do children think about the president, and making it fun to talk about that topic. So we got some improv actors. They got suggestions from the children and then would create sketches based on the children's suggestions, which was super fun and very successful. Then down on the bottom right there, a prototype program about an election. So really wanting to get at that idea of government and civic participation. So how do you make that fun for kids? You have two kind of wacky characters that are candidates running for office, and having a debate, having doing campaigning, and then letting the children ask them questions about their stances on different issues that would be of interest to children, such as school uniform or soda in a school vending machine. And then the children had a chance to register to vote and then actually vote and have a victory parade. And this was intended to take place in the exhibit about community. And then there on the left, bottom left, using visitors themselves as the performers. So in this case it was camp, and the children would study an exhibit and then create a play that they then performed in the gallery itself. And this channel, not always camp, it could be a teen group that engages in that kind of program, or it could be some kind of community group. If you're interested in that, the National Museum of the American Indian has done fabulous programs with communities, different Native communities, where they've come in and as told their story. And this kind of thing is great if you want to use a larger cast and have more people available to tell your story, but you can't afford to pay that many actors. So I wanted to mention that there. One program I was especially proud of is called The Truth About Bunny. And here we wanted to convey the message of media literacy for children. And we were talking about ages 4 to 9 here. The idea that not everything that you read on the internet, especially, or even read in a newspaper or see on TV, is going to be 100% accurate. The idea of the bias might exist. So, these are pictures of the prototype performance that was done before the facility existed. But we created what I call a Sesame Street style show, where people interact with puppets, and there are also jokes for the grown-ups. But the idea is that, oh dear, I lost my place. There we go. The idea is that it's the day after the famous race between the tortoise and the hare, and the newspaper is reporting that the rabbit was a cheater, no, he lost the race. And the rabbit wants to find out why are they defaming my character in the newspaper, and finds out that the newspaper is actually owned by the tortoise's family. And then they see on TV the good fairy reporter is actually saying that the turtle was a cheater. And we find out that the fairy, who refers to Bunny as Foo-Foo, has an agreement with the bunny set up that he will stop bopping the field mice on the head if she will portray him favorably in the press. And then they go on the internet and they find all these different opinions about the event from the different bloggers and the commenters on the blog that are all portrayed by the actors. And it's just a fun way of getting that idea across that, the same event can be depicted in many different ways and different media. And it's fun because there's puppets and, even little kids are interested. So our next example is the Accokeek Foundation, which is outside Washington, D.C. as well, in Accokeek, Maryland. They are located in Piscataway National Park. A portion of it their foundation manages, and they have a fantastically multifaceted mission that encompasses agriculture, environmental stewardship, and history. So they operate a National Colonial farm, which is a living history site, and they raise livestock and heritage vegetables, and also run cultural programs such as different food preparation and Native American dance and different things. There's their website if you're interested in finding out more. But in terms of the history part of it, and I saw a lot of you are history people, they did a colonial wedding program. And in the past, they had run this museum theater internship program in the summertime when their visitation is the highest. And they would recruit specifically people who had an interest in history, either as actors or as historians. And those blends of people who enjoy both. And their family that they use to interpret their site, and this is the 1770s. The oldest daughter was getting married. So over the course of the summer, they had scripted and outlined interactions between the characters that were ongoing, that were building up to, at the end of the summer, a wedding event that was a performance where, with a wedding, but then a participatory experience where the wedding guests could dance traditional dances and have refreshments. And it was really fantastic how it linked these historic events. So talking about what was going on in the world in the in the 1770s, and then and also the modern themes of the family. So we see I have a few more pictures of it here. The daughter and her fiance are planning to move out to the Ohio, to the Western Territory there. And of course, any mom would feel sad if your oldest daughter was planning to move away where you would probably never see them again. And there was certainly a point of conflict in the show there, but something we could all relate to. And the uncle there at the bottom has returned from the Ohio to actually kind of share what the reality would be for this young couple should they choose to move as they plan. Another program they did that I just loved called Murder on the Potomac. So this was a participatory experience where the audience, after being given a little introductory performance, were then sent onto the site with a paper and pencil, and they were to look for clues and try and come up with their thoughts. So what might have happened? How did this person die? A dead body has been found. What happened? And then there's a performance after that then shows you what happened. And it was really just super fun. And let's see. So the Science Museum of Minnesota, a very large science center, has been a leader in museum theater since its inception, really, in the 1970s. Continues to have a very robust theater program and has actors on staff. And I wanted to mention, these aren't photos from this museum, but the Science Museum of Minnesota in particular has chosen to use its actors to do its demonstrations. And their thought behind it, which we can discuss, is potentially an area of conflict, that it's easier and more successful to train actors in content than it would be to try and create presenters out of people who are already familiar with content. So I know that is a topic that is often discussed. I want to train my very studied docents how to be actors, and you maybe never can. Maybe sometimes you, if they're open to it, you can have success with that, but might be something to consider that a presenter who's already skilled in that can be taught your content. So an idea I wanted to share also is Science Museum using first-person characters, because it's something we often associate with history museums, but this is the Real Pirates exhibit. I don't know if anyone saw it. It was touring around a couple years ago, but very well researched, based on fact, first-person pirates that visitors could interact with and ask questions. And they also did that with the Titanic exhibit. But one of their programs that's my favorite is their Suitcase Science program that accompanied an exhibit, the same name, where they reached out to members of their community in their entire state, all over, to collect objects, real objects from real Minnesotans that had stories relating to science. And so they would collect the object and also the story, and then they put together an exhibit and also a performance to complement it. And the idea was that the actor, and this was just one actor doing this show, would become that object when he touched it, or she. And so if the object was like a model plane, would speak as the model plane. I was created by Fred Smith because, and it was just a very interesting way of telling the story of the object, but also the person that owned that object and why it was special and how it related to science. And what was also neat about it was I put 30, but there probably were more like 50 different objects that could be used. And so depending on which monologues the actor that day knew, you put out different objects, and the audience could choose from them which they wanted to hear the stories about. So it was a different show every time, which was great. And it did tour around the state as well to the communities where those objects had been collected. I wanted to mention quickly about an organization with a live collection, just because they do sometimes face specific challenges. This is the Monterey Bay Aquarium in California, and they do need to perform outdoors, which is a challenge maybe some history museums would also face. They have a deck where they would do their shows. The ocean is the backdrop there, which is wonderful and also horrible for a performance, since it's so beautiful in itself. But it's also very narrow and very wide. They get very creative with how they use it. And I wanted to point out the puppets here. If anyone went to AAM when it was in Los Angeles and went to the Skirball Cultural Center and saw the Noah's Ark exhibit there, fabulous animal creations and puppets. And the person that did that there created these puppets for the Monterey Bay Aquarium as well. And they're very sophisticated. We tend to think about puppetry as something for children, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. It can be a beautiful and attractive thing for adults to experience as well. And I wanted to point out here the Monterey Bay Jazz Festival. They will come perform at the aquarium on Friday nights, which is a great community partnership and something not to forget about when we're developing our programs, that partnerships can be a wonderful thing to engage with our community and connect with our visitors. And I put in a slide here about staff training because we connect with our visitors in so many different ways, and theater is not always the best way to do that. But sometimes theater might be a good way to train staff because it's all about communication, and because our frontline staff are communicating with our visitors. Great ways to use different theatrical techniques to train staff, and if anyone's interested in talking more about that later, we can certainly do that. And then art museums, admittedly fewer art museums using theater for whatever reason, but some quick examples here. The Portrait Gallery, Smithsonian Portrait Gallery, that has a teen program where the teens will study the subjects of a particular portrait and then write a monologue and perform in costume as the subject of the painting right in front of it, which is so great. And then using creative movement to explore works of art. This is a photo from the Presidio Dance Theater also in California. And the Dallas Museum of Art, I borrowed their photo here just to mention that so many of us do docent tours or guided tours by educators. And really what you're doing with these tours is storytelling. And so if you think about them that way and you train the presenters that way, and the techniques of storytelling can be a way to really beef up a tour and make it very engaging, even though you might be, a tour guide might be afraid to think of themselves as an actor, but they're a performer, and when embracing that can help improve the experience for the visitors. So any more examples? People are interested. I know I mentioned maybe there being some videos. The Smithsonian's National Museum of American History has some of their performances online. The Constitution Center in Philadelphia, a great place. The Zoological Society in Milwaukee, Children's Museum of Indianapolis, and the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago. There are just a few examples of institutions that I know that are doing great work. If one of them seems to speak to you, the people there are also fabulous and will share with you more details about what they're doing. So are there any other questions? I thought this would be another good place to take a break and see.
I have one more about Intel. Is there a system in place with Intel affiliates members can borrow or rent props or costumes from other members?
So of course there's always informal ways of sharing. If you meet someone at an event or connect with them through the listserv or the member directory, say, I like what you're doing, can I borrow, can I share? But what we rolled out a couple years ago was an actual database that's available for members. I'm not sure the status of it right now because the website itself is in transition, but it does exist, a database of scripts that members have said are available to rent, and if the costumes and props are also available to be rented, it would be listed in the database. And that it's a benefit of membership of Intel. And yeah, I think it's accessible through the members area of the website.
Okay, it looks like we do have someone writing. This is definitely your chance. If you guys have any questions, don't forget we'll also be taking questions later on if you come up with any of them. Sharon is writing something, so we can hold on a second until she's done.
Okay. This photo is of the Time Trial of Benedict Arnold. The Time Trial series is a program that the National Museum of American History has been developing that's worth mentioning. An actor will present the story of a controversial character from history, and an educator who is not an actor or not in costume but is just themselves, like with a name tag, will facilitate then a discussion where the audience members can ask questions of the historical character, and that character will answer as, based on history, and try and defend themselves, defend their legacy. So if Benedict Arnold is his legacy as a traitor, or why did he do what he did, and he'll defend himself, and then the audience can debate with each other, can debate with the character, can debate with the educator who is more removed, and then at the end there's a vote taken. How it's put on trial. How is his legacy going to be remembered, and or how should it be? And they've done that with John Brown as well. Perhaps others that I can't remember, but I was skeptical that people would actually engage in that way, but they do. The one I thought was just incredible, that young people who had been studying John Brown in high school, really getting into it with the actor. Why did you do this? So let's see, what's the question from Sharon?
We are at an art museum and have been considering partnering with a theater department on campus to present either a murder in the museum or a theft in the museum. How involved is the process for developing something like this, and what resources are available to guide the process for a successful event? I know we just had one of those down at the Newport Art Museum for a conference down there last November.
Well, that sounds like a lot of fun. And I think
partnering
with I think partnering with the theater department is a great idea. I worked with the Brookfield Zoo. We actually partnered with a community theater, but I think it would work similarly, that they had performers there looking for opportunities to perform, and we had a need for a low-cost labor that would be talented. And so so that, I'm not sure based on this question if you're looking for the theater department to develop the program with you, or if you're just looking to recruit them as actors, but either way it could be done. How involved is the process? I think it could be as much or as little as you want it to be. And I think in terms of a resource to guide the process, probably the most helpful thing would be to find someone through Intel or through another channel that's done something similar and talk to them about their experience. And the Intel listserv is one way of reaching those people. If you want to talk to me, I can put you in touch. Paul Taylor is, if anyone has met him, he's actually in Philadelphia at the Franklin Institute right now, but he also runs a murder mystery company where they do events in museums, and I'm sure he would be willing to talk to you. So I could definitely get you in touch.
And Port Art Museum would probably be helpful too, because I know they've been doing that one for quite a while now, and they're working with the local theater group down there.
For those museums who are doing this, are you hiring volunteers, actors, or utilizing your own staff? Since these questions seem to be leading us in the direction of developing a program, I think I might hop on there and try and get at the questions as we go. And possibly to take a quick step back, to define what stories you want to tell. And maybe this is a story that is difficult to tell in an exhibit, or maybe it's a story that's just best shared theatrically. So if it's something with a lot of action and not necessarily a superhero kind of action, but like a literary kind of action where plot events occur, those kinds of stories are often told very well through theater, because not all stories are. Or perhaps it is a specific audience that you're looking to reach, or another goal. Maybe, I don't know if this Murder in the Museum is a revenue generating program, but it could be. It sounds like it could be. So to kind of make sure you know what you want to do and what messages you as the institution want to share would definitely be the first place to start, because you don't want, if someone else is coming in to help you, you don't want them to define what you as a museum wants to share with your visitors. So then what methods are best to tell this story? And that could be a theatrical technique, it could be a play, it could be something totally different. Make sure that what you're doing is the best way, and then you identify who are these key players, or who could the players be. And I think that's where we get into, could I partner with a local university to have some very talented young people do the presentation, or if I feel that the talent in my museum would not be able to create a script, is this something I could get a consultant or an intern if you have a place nearby with a writing program, or maybe you have a volunteer in your ranks that has that skill and you don't know unless you ask. And so I definitely recommend starting with your staff and your volunteers, because it does seem that a lot of theater people migrate to the museum world, maybe because it's like a big set, or because it gives you the chance to kind of pretend a little bit that you're somewhere else, or think that way. And so there very well might be talent within your own ranks already that you can utilize, and certainly being able to contribute a specific skill makes for very happy staff and volunteers. But if you don't have that skill, where could it come from? Do you have the resources to hire a professional, or is there another way of connecting with someone that could get you that skill. And I listed partnerships as a possibility, since there are places out there that that might want to work with you. And when talking about developing a program, I wanted to mention the best practices document that I did reference at the beginning. It is available, IMTAL.org, on the About Museum Theater page. So if you actually click on About Museum Theater, it will take you to a page that has that document. And these are the kind of highlights here that I've listed, but under each one there's different points that and I don't think anyone expects a program to hit all of them, but what we wanted to do was give everyone kind of a common aspiration, because bad museum theater is sometimes worse than no museum theater. And I think maybe people might say it is worse than no museum theater. For whatever reason, people who've had a bad experience with, you know, a bad show, it's hard to forget that. So so we do want to aspire to making it as high quality as possible. And you know, some of the things here are directly linked with what EdCom already says for its education programs, such as having accurate content and you know, having evaluation. And some of them are more specific to a theater program. So having in place a system of cleaning costumes, you know, or other things in terms of breaks and rehearsal time and those sorts of things. And that's all outlined in that document. And other resources are available online. Some of them are free for anyone. Some of them are for IMTAL members. And as I mentioned, the website is in transition. So if you're looking for something that you can't find, just ask the board members of IMTAL. They're all volunteer, but they are very dedicated and want to help. So just feel free to ask anytime. And before we
other questions.
Oh, we have questions?
Yes, yes. Do you have some examples of how historic house museums can incorporate museum theater techniques in the experience outside of Conner Prairie, which is most often mentioned?
Or I wonder if they're specifically asking about, so they say theater techniques, are they talking about participatory experiences, or in general more theatrical techniques? The Akakeek examples that I mentioned were some of my favorites. They're ones I've been involved with. The other things that they did, they had a school program that they had, you know, different stations around the site where the group would travel to, and one of those sites was interacting with a first-person character, and that station was very successful, and children tended to remember what they learned from that character. So they were doing some experimentation with adding 2 other characters to the tour. So 2 other stations were also led by characters, and then they added creative dramatics into the stations, the other stations. And so it could be, so for example, they were talking about planting the tobacco and harvesting the tobacco, and instead of just talking about it when standing in front of the tobacco barn, they had the children imagine and use pantomime to enact what the steps would be. And so creating the hill at the bottom of the tobacco plant, or you know, the constant pulling of the weeds, and the stamping on the bugs, and you know, sort of put it into your body and make it more real. Certainly storytelling, one program that I loved that was a historic house specifically was a reader's theater, where the actors didn't have to memorize, so it was easier to rehearse. And they did one about ghost stories, and they didn't necessarily relate to that house exactly, but it related to the time period in which the house was being interpreted. And then they did another one at Valentine's Day, which was love stories, and they were some actual letters, and they were some excerpts from literature and other kinds of love stories. That they really just had actors in costume reading from a 3-ring binder. But still, they were able to cover so much ground that way, and it was a great program for them.
And then we have a great example from the Courier Museum of Art. It said they've been working with a local theater company to offer play readings that relate to artworks on view. For example, they recently read a play about Mark Roscoe. Following the play, they had a brief post-play discussion led by local theater professor and museum staff. And then they invite guests to continue the conversation in front of the work of art. They said it's been very successful in adding a different level of understanding to the art, building community partnerships, and developing a new audience.
Wow, fantastic.
And then, that was just a nice sharing. And then Rose writes, we train already talented, enthusiastic teacher types for programming staff. Normal everyday skits in programming are very dynamic. Scores at recruitment time include drama and music. And then another question from Nathaniel. Can you comment on how to handle intellectual property rights? At the Old State House in Boston, we've commissioned an original script for a 1-hour play, and we definitely had a steep learning curve where the question of rights was concerned. We ended up not owning the rights to the script, but negotiated exclusive performance rights for a period of many years. It might be helpful to know what is considered best practice in this area.
In terms of rights for scripts, I think the best practice is to make sure that it is outlined in the contract with the people involved from the beginning. I think there are different solutions that work better in different circumstances, so I don't think there's one way that's necessarily the right way. But I have seen it work both ways, where someone is paid a flat fee, and in the contract it says, we own the rights to this work. Sometimes, as you said, you don't own the rights, but you have performance rights. And then sometimes it's shared. Really, I really think it can depend. It really depends on the individual. It depends on the institution. It depends on the content of, the material. But it sounds like you came up with a great solution there. I know that as I mentioned, there is a script database on the MTAL site for members, and in those cases, it's been negotiated with the playwright that the rights can be borrowed by other museums for a certain fee, and sometimes a percentage of that fee goes back to the playwright. If they don't have the rights anymore, then all of that fee goes to the museum. I know when I had an intern develop a script for me once, and it was, I had to have them find something that said, I don't own the rights. I am giving you my rights, even though they were not paid, because if you're a paid staff and you're writing the script automatically belongs to an institution unless specified otherwise. But with the intern, they weren't being paid, so then it was tricky, but we actually had them sign. I think just knowing in advance what you're going to do is the key. So I wanted to take a second before we leave to just do a shameless plug for the MTAL Regional Conference, which is coming up later in September of this year. September 28th to August 2nd, Chicago, being hosted by the Museum of Science and Industry. That does fabulous work. It's a great museum. And MTAL folks are lots of fun. This is an example of something you might see in a session. No boring sessions for us. It's a great time to be had by all, both during the conference itself and at the evening events. And there's information on the website. Definitely invite everyone to come on out to Chicago if you can. It'll be a great time. And I'll go back one second. If anyone is familiar with the Theater and Museums workshop that was led by Tessa Bridal for years and years, since her retirement, she is now working through MTAL. So her workshop this year, which will be a little shorter than normal, but it will be in association with this conference. So if anyone was looking for that, from now on it will be offered in conjunction with MTAL and almost always with an MTAL event. So that will be happening starting this year. And just in case someone wants to contact me for any questions when we're done with the webinar, the best way right now is pastpresident@imtal.org. I'm on my own now, so I have plenty of time to respond to questions.
Well, thanks again, Jillian, very much for presenting. And I'll put in a little plug for New England Museum Association as well. If you'll visit our website at nemanet.org, we have a list of workshops coming up in the spring and summer that are open for registration. And then, of course, our conference is taking place in November 19th through 21st in Cambridge, Massachusetts. So we hope to see you there. And thanks, everyone, for participating.
Maggie just had a question. We actually did record it, Maggie, so check the NEMA website shortly, and I will be posting it there, the actual recording of this, the webinar and stuff. Is there any last-minute questions before we end the session? Just a bunch of thank yous, Jillian. We do appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. It was so much fun.
Okay, thanks. Take care.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye, everyone.